We'd love to know if this is something that you have been affected with, you and your family. Let us know. The government have abandoned the Conservatives' plan to cap the amount that people pay towards their social care at £86,000. Now, the cap was due to come into force in England in October next year. Anyone with assets more than £23,250 must pay for all their social care themselves as it stands. Scrapping this will save the Treasury billions, but critics have said that the government is kicking the ongoing problem of social care into the long grass and just failing another generation. Should the elderly have to pay for their own care is what we're asking. Lynn?
I just think this is a bit of a kick in the teeth for those that come from, let's say, middle-class backgrounds who are deemed, especially now in society, as not massively wealthy. Those who are massively wealthy, this will not affect them. And I think for those who are saying, which I was one of them to a degree, you know, good, everything is always geared towards protecting pensioners and the elderly. But this doesn't just affect them, it also affects my generation and the generation probably below me, for the simple fact that a third of people who managed to get on the property ladder did so with the help of mum and dad, the bank of mum and dad. And what we're going to see now is any of that assistance, not just about buying property, just we're seeing so much help given from parents now, and we won't be able to see that anymore. So it's affecting not only that generation, but lots of generations to come as well.
What do you think, Michael?
I think that's an interesting point. I mean, I think I disagree quite profoundly. I think we've come to this debate, not on this show, but I mean as a country, sort of the wrong way around, because at the moment, obviously, people get old and they're worried about what social care they're going to be entitled to, and they're worried that that care is going to be of a low quality, which too often it is. We don't pay people working in social care enough. But the policy debate seems to be basically, how do we protect people's inheritances for their kids? So you say, the big fear seems to be that wealthy people will end up having to spend too much of their housing wealth on social care and they won't be able to pass it down to their kids. Now, I think this economy that we have at the moment, whereby your chances in life, you can only possibly get on the property ladder if you're lucky enough to inherit some money, is pretty bad.
It's not wealthy people, though. 23,000, let's say before, the cap is, it's 23,000. Those with assets of 23,000. That is not a lot. It's not even a fraction. So for you to suggest that someone who's worked over 50 years, even 60 years, that only has 23,000, that is not wealth.
So how the policy worked, what Labour have dropped.
Yeah.
So say your parents have a house that's worth £1 million.
OK.
Then at the moment, you have to spend, if their dementia care costs £900,000, then they'll have to spend all of that. Now, not many people's dementia costs are going to cost £900,000.
I think the average on social care at the end of life is about £100,000.
Yeah. But how this will work is, as soon as you've spent 86 grand, the state will pay the rest. So say if your care does cost £500,000, then the state is just going to keep paying it just to protect the inheritance of their kids. And I just think this is a strange way to approach the debate.
Inheritance isn't your money. That is the amount of money that your relatives, your parents, your grandparents have earned themselves. And therefore, are you owed that?
Well, if, let's say, my parents or grandparents have worked hard all their life, and what we're not looking at is the new calculations of somebody who may have come from actually quite a poor background, managed to buy their property, let's say a council property, helped to buy, and they have a bit of money, equity in that property. Would you say that's a wealthy person? Let's say they have 4 children or 5 children. 23,000 of assets. I'm not going to say that's some, inheritance of vast amounts where they need to support their grandchildren. And what we're seeing now is, gone are the days where children, let's say of working age, could stay at home. Let's say a wife could stay home and look after their parents. We all need to go to work. We all have childcare responsibilities. And what we're going to see is people, oftentimes many single women, are now going to have to assist their parents or their single mothers in having to try and come together and pay for that. And like I said, the extremely wealthy, I wouldn't have an issue with. It's not going to touch the sides. I'm looking at those who are more like working class, that have managed to benefit from social mobility and just about get to that middle class. They're going to be really hit by this.
It is interesting whether this is actually targeting potentially the wrong people. In Scotland, local authorities pay for most care, but you do make some contributions if you're entering a care home, just going over the other nations. And in Wales, it's means tested. If you have savings of less than £24,000, you'll be fully funded by the local authorities. It's means tested in Northern Ireland as well, so fairly similar between them two. Let's go to the calls now. Melanie from Manchester, is this something that's affected your family?
Oh, yeah. My mum is in social care, and she's been in there now for about 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. We owe about 100,000 now. The house is worth about 320,000.
Okay.
Not a lot of this day and age. And my mum and dad were working class. They worked all their lives to just give us a bit of inheritance for me, my sister who's passed away now, but my children and my sister's children. And it's all going to go. It's all going to go. And I'm absolutely devastated that,
Is it any solace?
There's cap.
It must be terribly hard for you in the situation that you are, but does it give you any solace that maybe contributing in that way to the care system will mean that our care system is better, that everybody will get the care that they deserve?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because I think what the other lady was saying about it's going to hit those people hard that haven't got much, which I haven't. I haven't got anything. My house was going to be paid for with my house is falling down around me. And just a little bit, if there'd have been a cap, even if it was a higher cap, a little bit more, then it would have meant, so much. We're just losing the house. All them years they paid into the house.
Yeah.
All them years. What was the point?
I wonder whether this whole situation, whether we're actually killing aspiration.
Yes.
And the mega wealthy, as Lynn has said, it won't even touch the side. They won't care. They would be getting private health care anyway. And
I'm glad you said that.
I'm just wondering whether this is not a great approach for Labour.
So I'll use myself as an example, actually. So in terms of sort of people working hard, my parents they're retired now, but they did work very hard in the public sector. But they bought a house in East London, I think for about sort of 25 grand in the 80s. Mm-hmm. That's now worth like £700,000,
so this is basically a tax on boomers.
I'm
saw the house prices
Well, I'm saying that there
rising.
will be lots of people whereby their housing wealth is something that they really earned and they really worked hard for. But my parents, while they did work very hard in their life, the fact that I might get an inheritance of £500,000 isn't because they worked really hard, it's because house prices massively ballooned. And at the moment, it's the case where, unless my parents get dementia, me and my sister will be entitled to about £500,000 each for not having done anything. Mm. And what I think we should probably say is that everyone should pay at least 50% inheritance tax, and that can pay for everyone's social care. Because at the moment, what you've got is this strange... So
would you rather it was an inheritance tax rather than having to pay for your own social care? You think that would be more fair?
I think that'd be more fair, because the problem at the moment is you're sort of playing this sort of lottery where if your parents are unlucky enough to get dementia, then you don't get an inheritance. If they do get dementia, you don't get an inheritance. If they do get dementia,
If they don't get dementia and they die...
I'm having a little moment now as well.
I understand.
I think it should be based on the fact that...
It's an illness lottery.
Yeah, we don't want an illness lottery.
But also on top of that, what we've got is regardless of what you have over this, let's say £25,000, you have to pay the full extent of your care costs, which could take up all the inheritance, whereas inheritance tax takes a percentage of everybody's tax, a larger percentage of everybody's tax. Yeah. Which may be fairer.
But you're speaking from a very London-centric point of view, and I haven't seen anywhere where this massively differs around the country. So as we heard from the lady before, I'm going to assume a house worth 300,000. She's definitely not in London, nowhere near
Manchester,
London.
Yeah.
Exactly. So again, I think this needs to be, like you said, I think in Scotland, it's means tested. We need to stop having this London centrist point of view. There are going to be places around the country that possibly those houses are now in negative equity, or they're not worth that much. And every single thing, if you're forced to sell your home where your grandchildren go to, then the care is going to be far more if you have to move.
Is Melanie still on the line?
Yes.
Could I ask
Melanie.
Could I ask a question, Melanie? which is so say sort of the proposal I'm suggesting. Obviously, I'm not a politician in government, so it's not going to happen. But for hypothetical purposes, if it were to be the case that you didn't have to worry about the amount of money that's being spent on the care for your parents, but you knew that your parents' sort of housing wealth, half of that would be taxed, and then all of their care would be paid for. Would that be a situation that you would maybe be comfortable with?
Yeah, definitely. It just needs to be a little bit more fairer for those that have put in and tried the best to pass things on to the children so they're not on the welfare state or whatever. But I mean, and one final, what I would like to say is I voted Labour and I feel stabbed in the back. I really do. I'm a Labour supporter and I can't believe, again, it's the little people that are going to,
Between this and the winter fuel payments, I think a lot of people might feel a bit betrayed in that situation. Melanie, thank you very much for your call. Let's now speak to Ruth Isden from Age UK. Thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of Labour ditching this cap?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate for a whole range of reasons, and not just for the ones that you've been discussing here this morning. The social care system is in crisis. We've known this for quite some time. So when this solution was originally proposed 10 years ago, it was looking at a very specific issue, which is the one that you've been describing about people who, through no fault of their own, can end up effectively losing all of their money. And there are big issues around that. And it's not just about inheritance. It's about the fact that actually what happens to those people who then run out of money and they still need care. So there are a whole set of issues around that. But we also know that this has been on the table for about 10 years now, and it's not the first proposal that's been put on the table to try and fix the social care system. And over that period of time, things have got an awful lot worse. So we've got a whole host of problems that now need to be resolved, including around where we find enough people to work in the sector, where people can find enough care. We know there are millions of older and disabled people out there who don't get the help that they need, regardless of how they can pay for that. So there's a lot of problems out there. This was a partial solution. They've decided not to move ahead with it. But so that leaves some really, really big questions now for all of those individuals and families about, well, what are they going to do? What does a solution look like? And will Labour bring forward some solutions to look at how we can fix this problem for good going forward?
And for people that are probably watching this and a little bit concerned, what can people do if they're struggling to pay for their social care?
So what people need to do, if you or a loved one, you think you're in need of social care, you're struggling to cope at home, meeting your personal care needs, managing around the home, all of that sort of thing, the first step is to really contact your local authority and request an assessment. So that should be a needs assessment, whether they'll look at, the issues that you might be struggling with, some of the help that you might need. And then they'll also do this process where they'll look at your financial means as well. So those are sort of two separate processes that happen. Of course, you may or may not be eligible to receive any help based on how severe your needs are. You do have to be really in quite a lot of need these days to get help, to qualify. And then there's a separate process where they'll look at your income, your assets, some of those issues that you've been describing, and they'll see how much you can afford to contribute. So I think one of the things that people do need to recognise is the social care system does have charges more or less for everybody. So they may say that, your income and your assets just put you outside of the financial threshold. And, for now, you need to set about arranging your own care, although there may be some support from them to manage that process. But even for people whose income and assets do qualify them to receive some support, they would still potentially be charged. So one of the things to recognise is under the current system, even if you do qualify for financial help, they will still look at how much you can personally afford to contribute from your income, even after your assets have fallen below that kind of £14,000 floor.
Oh, wow. OK, so lots to consider there. Ruth Isden from Age UK, thank you very much for your time there. We're going to go back to the calls now and speak to Marina now from Swindon. Marina.
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Great. Has this directly affected you in any way?
No, I think what I would advise people to do, when my husband knew that he had dementia for 7 years at home, and then for my health, they advised me to get him into a care home. So my daughter-in-law made appointments at 5 care homes in Swindon, and we visited them all to decide which one not for money or anything, which one would suit him better. And that's how we went about it. If you sit at home, you can't possibly choose. You might choose the dearest one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Marina, I think what we're discussing here isn't how you choose a care home, although it sounds like you've done a great job there.
No, but that affects the money. It affects the money is what I'm saying, because the one we went to, it was the most expensive. And in the 5 years he was in there, I paid £67,000 out of my money, because luckily I'm on no benefits, but it's still a lot to be taken out of. I've got a small teacher's pension and he had a small one. It's a lot of money to pay for 5 years, 60,000. I don't want to go on thinking that all old people get it all free.
No.
They should be paid.
Well, that's part of this discussion, Marina, and actually whether you should get your care costs free, or do you think that maybe, you know, it's valid to ask older people to contribute to their own care?
Well, yes, if possible, because some of them own a business. Some people own a business and put the mother in, and they can easily. I think there should be a check-up on it, but I don't. I've got friends in here. There's 48 apartments here, and I've got friends in here whose husbands this year, and they all said that they were honest when they were asked, and none of them have taken any benefits from anything, but they still have to pay that. It's 1,000 something a month, £1,130 a month they were taking.
So what you're saying is they paid taxes all their life, never taken any benefits out of the system, and then when it came to the care for their husbands, they were honest about the assets that they had and they had to pay.
Yeah, I said to my son, I said, all these years we've been paying it, and now I've got to pay all this money. You know, I didn't regret it, because he had Alzheimer's. He didn't know where he was, and he didn't know me.
He needed the help, of course.
But he died 2 years ago, and I know it sounds awful, but it gave me a release, you know, from. In my life, I could go out and go whatever I want to do. I never had any carers come in. Carers are very expensive and very unreliable.
Sounds very normal, and actually with something like dementia and Alzheimer's, I feel like oftentimes you feel like you've lost your loved one a long time before they actually pass. Marina, thank you very much for your call. Denise from Northamptonshire, what's your thoughts on this? Has this affected you in any way?
It hasn't really affected me. I was left the money from my husband. I had my house, so I had to buy a bungalow. I couldn't manage my house. Okay. It was too big. And, you know, but my husband, I get half a pension from my husband, and the government snatches back the other half in tax. So I'm still paying tax on his pension, you know.
And you'll still have to...
They're taking money off me still. You know, and I think I've worked all my life. I've scrubbed floors on my hands and knees. I've worked for £1 an hour, and now, you know, I mean, I've got. Why can't the young ones should pay for their own sickness? You know what I mean?
Denise, it'll be very interesting to hear how Labour, the party, goes forward with this, and what decisions they make around care, because a lot of thought will have to be put into it. But as it stands, this cap that the Conservatives wanted to put in place has been lifted. Thank you very much for your call. Thanks.